So now we go on to the sixth story and lesson, which is Rahab and the Spies. This might be my best. I like spy movies too, so that's probably why. And there's always some altercation with some woman, and in this case, it is Rahab, right? Interestingly, though, she was not an Israelite. She had a less than stellar occupation, and yet she was able to exercise faith even before she talked about it. Right? She did the action first, and then she asked for favor later. She acted first, and so my question here is, why did God, in your opinion, honor her faith in such a way that He would spare her and her family, and she didn't even have to like slay a lamb? It was like a Passover but without blood. A bloodless Passover that she had to submit to, but her faith was still kind of honored. Any thoughts or opinion as to why would God behave in such a way?
The story of Rahab is such a beautiful gospel story. The pre-preaching of the gospel, like Paul refers to in Galatians with Abraham. The gospel was pre-preached through Abraham. We see the gospel being pre-preached here. Here, Rahab is a woman who's lost in sin herself. She is a harlot. At the same time, she's part of a culture that's doomed for destruction. God is planning on destroying the Canaanite and their forms of worship. Just like on the day of Pentecost, the people ask, what shall we do to be saved? And he talks about having faith, being baptized to be delivered from this evil generation. Paul in Galatians talks about that Jesus died for us to deliver us from this present evil world. You see this story come to life in Rahab. And what we learn right away about Rahab is that she knew about the Israelites. She'd heard the stories. And you know, the gospel is the sharing of a story. It's the sharing of the story of deliverance and how God has rescued His people. And so here, really what Rahab is asking for is to become part of that story rather than the story that has defined her as a Canaanite in Jericho. She's wanting to change stories. I want to be part of their story. And so that's really, I think, what this is all about. The bloodless Passover, it's a clever turn of phrase. She furls her scarlet cord, this picture of the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It's that picture of faith. She knew the story. She wanted to be part of God's story. And so she asked. And that's the story of the gospel. That's the story of every one of us that are looking for salvation from our present circumstances, and how there is a new story awaiting us if we will believe and ask in faith. And the grace of God is there, but as Paul teaches us in Ephesians 2, we're saved by grace through faith. So that gracious initiative has already been extended. But how do we respond? Well, we respond by faith. Lord, I want to be part of your story. I want to know you as Savior and Lord. And all of a sudden, the harlot Rahab is no longer associated with Jericho. Now she's associated with the people of God. And we find her in the genealogy of Christ in Matthew 1. Remarkable transfer. How he rescues her from one situation, restores her in another.
Yeah, and I think, what's so powerful about Rahab's story is just that amount of faith. I mean, that she was a harlot in the city that was condemned for destruction, and that was her culture. She had no reason, based on her own merits, to believe that this Hebrew God would accept her. Why would this God that He's actually sending destruction on her entire city, why would He accept her? That's when you're looking at yourself. But she had the faith to look beyond herself, beyond her harlotry, beyond all of that, and to look and to see that God is so good that He can even rescue me. And that's what she asked for. You know, and I see that, you know, one of the things I think, you know, is tragic is when people get, maybe they've spent their whole life, you know, apart from God, and then they get to, you know, sick in a hospital bed and thinking they're going to die and things, and then maybe somebody's trying to share the gospel with them. They don't want to talk about it because they're terrified. You know, they're thinking, why would God forgive me? I lived my whole life apart from Him.
Right. It's
And
too late.
yeah, it's too late. So you bringing it up just terrifies me.
Right.
I don't want to think about it. And that very thing prevents them from the salvation that's available because they think it's about them. And it's not about us. It's not about our goodness or our lack of goodness. It's about the goodness of God and that He will forgive. You know,
rescue.
And rescue.
Yeah.
Right.
And that touches on another side of this. We could put ourselves on the other side of the coin. Those Israelites that have received the grace of God and have come out of Egypt and come through the wilderness or coming to the promised land. It's easy for us in that position not to identify so much with Rahab and her sin, but to identify ourselves as the saved and the redeemed. And we can point at Rahab and say, boy, there is a sinner. There is someone in whom there is no hope. But these kind of stories, I think, have a way of rattling us and reminding us about our own rescue and restoration, and that we cannot deprive that opportunity from any person. No matter how bad they look, God is in the business of rescuing and restoring people that are maybe to us it looks impossible, but to God all things are possible.
And you mentioned about the bloodless Passover, and you know, I think I've got a little response to things, but I'd like to hear your response on bloodless Passover. You're the one that asked the question, and I'd like to hear your perspective.
It was interesting that she didn't have to kill any lamb, right? It was just an exercise of faith, and it kind of goes to the next question that I'm about to ask you guys, right? Okay, so her town or her village and her family and her people were condemned to die, essentially, right? Just like how the world is condemned to die or was, but we had our bloodless, like on the cord. The scarlet cord is the thing that I was referring to, right? That's all she had to put down, right? For us, we have Christ, like He had to shed His blood, but we didn't have to really do any sort of slaying. We just exercise faith in what?
I think faith is the scarlet cord.
Right.
Faith is that scarlet cord. And remember, Jesus is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. In other words, Rahab is already participating in the sacrifice that God's made available, even though in history that sacrifice hasn't taken place yet.
Right.
In God's mind, that offering has been made from the very beginning, and it covers beginning to end. And so that scarlet cord is beautiful because it's a symbol that God has acted to restore and that we can respond in faith.
Right, okay. So let's go on to the next lesson. Even though this is my favorite, we can't stay here all day.
Stay here long.